I'll let the last few folks filter in. I've got some coming in from the sides. Okay. Thank you all so much for joining today on the presentation that I have prepared for you on the inside of the mind of exposure and looking at cyber psychology as a driver. In cybersecurity, it's not often that people enjoy looking into the social dilemma or the psychological dilemma of cybersecurity. You'll often see the technical dilemma, but not what happens from a biological perspective in the body when you're fighting crime to when you are also implementing crime. So today we will go through the biological imperative that happens in the body, and we'll move forward from the biological to the geopolitical and economic. So a bit more about me. I was just introduced. I started my career officially as a security analyst working on a SIM, but moved to Gartner as a security analyst. I was at Gartner as a security analyst for 5 years, and having left Gartner, I started to go back into the security space running a security strategy program at MongoDB. When I left MongoDB, I went into go-to-market consulting for startups. But I found something quite amazing when I did. It's that certain problems that we had always incurred were not solved. Does this sound familiar to you? Oftentimes, I keep hearing the same exact thing by prospects in the vendor world as I'd heard by prospects and customers and end users in the Gartner world. I keep hearing this. Our backs are against the walls. We're drowning in alerts. We're starving for answers. This is the state of cybersecurity, and it's not just the noise, it's the pain that I want to empathize with today and want to bring you into the world of that pain. And it's sad because we came into cybersecurity to protect, to defend, and to use our forces for good. Burnout and moral injury are real, and I found in my work that we had to dig a little faster, a little deeper. So here's what we're going to do today, as I had mentioned earlier. We are first going to start off with the biological imperative. I built my research to go layer after layer. I'm currently finishing up my master's in data science at Hopkins, and I'll be moving more towards the behavioral and economic implications of cybersecurity, using the data that I have at hand. What we're going to do is this. We're going to start with how dopamine and cortisol affect the body for attackers and defenders. We will then move into the psychological implications of groupthink. How are digital tribes built versus the isolated functions we have? Then I'll move into societal impacts. Who is glorified? And then into linguistics. Where are they glorified? And then further, how do we build an economy of defense rather than an economy of attack? So let's start on the joy and the pain. Security always ignores the nervous system. I often see a lot of people check out when we talk about the biological imperative, but it's funny. I came on stage and I was shaking a bit. I'm nervous a bit. My cortisol is a bit high. But my dopamine rush is too, because I love doing this. I love looking at you. I love talking to you. I love seeing you. It's a high for me. Not often are we finding that high in the security world. I have to be honest. Kevin Mitnick, the late and the great, said, it was like a drug. I get a rush every time I broke in. That's funny. When we look at this, dopamine is a reward chemical. It's like gambling, gaming, playing in risk. You get this high, this feeling. You know, this doesn't just happen from the reward. It happens right before it. It's anticipatory. It causes a reinforcement loop. So think about it. Right when you get into the casino, you see the lights, you're ready to throw down, you're already excited, you're on a high, and you're expecting a win. When in security functions are you expecting that same win on a daily basis? When are your tools enabling that win on a daily basis? The greatest high is the intrusion. The worst high is the depletion of a defender. On the defender side, biology is reversed. Cortisol is that stress hormone we're dealing with on a daily basis. It's not the breaches that break you, it's always being behind that breaks you. That's the problem. So what you're looking at here on this slide is that neurochemical driver, dopamine, that reward loop. It happens right before you even get to the gamble, right before you get to the attack. It's reinforced, it's cyclical. I'm ready to take down again. But the defender is in a stress loop on a continuous basis. What's the trigger? I know I'm going to make a lot of money, or at least I have that while being obfuscated by a service as an attacker. What about the defender? I'm on call, I'm on alert fatigue, and none of the UI makes any sense to the joy. And how do I have 10 systems now running different UIs, all depleting my joy on a daily basis, and I'm just waiting to get attacked? So if you're waiting and you're watching people ready to rob your house and come in from a distance or close by, I'm sure you're not excited, right? That's the day. There's a reason I'm talking about this, by the way. It's going to seem like a complaint throughout this, but we're going to talk about how to build dopaminergic response back into the body of a security function. This is one part here. So when we look at the effect, memory loss, fatigue, impairment, we usually call this a system 2 response. A system 2 response in the brain is this, and this is what you'll see when you go home when you're leading your security functions. I'm getting reactive, I'm getting error prone. I'm moving to break things now because I am done, I'm tired. A system 2 response in the mind is I can think clearly, I can relax, I can be a little bit more. But you do not have that opportunity in cybersecurity. So what we're doing right now is we're breaking. We are legitimately breaking. So how do we bring that dopaminergic response back into cybersecurity? To counterbalance it, we must intentionally engineer that response into cybersecurity tooling and ask our vendors to do that to begin with. And one of the ways that we can do that is rewarding workflows. So let's think about this for just a moment. It's a concept that isn't often discussed, but I want you to think about it. You're asking your vendors to consolidate your tooling. You're asking your vendors to lower the cost. But are you asking them to reward tactical wins or even give immediate micro awards? And are you doing the same things for your teams? Remember, we need a high put back into the function. I'm here today to help you think about the people, not about the tooling, not about the latest, greatest trends in tech. You can go to my Bright Talk channel and see that. But here I am to tell you, how do we re-engineer this? Because I care about the people. One of the ways I say is build tooling that aligns with cognitive load. Every cybersecurity tool you buy should rebuild the cognitive load of your analyst and reinforce recovery. Every alert, every noise is something that seems inevitable, I understand. But how do we make alert joy? It might sound like a crazy idea, doesn't it? But how do we bring risk back? Now, biology is only the spark. After chemicals fire, exposure embeds itself into cognition. So, if I'm on a constant high all the time, that's where addiction begins, right? If I have a gambling addiction, it's obviously because that dopaminergic response I got from gambling, I'm back again, I'm back again, I'm back again. That will build the way that you think. And this is the psychology behind exposure. Our brains aren't just reacting to signals, they're constructing meanings, patterns, and predictions. So, attackers are anticipatory. They anticipate dopamine. They're hooked on that buildup. But when defenders introduce uncertainty, honeypots say, attackers' brains register prediction error. Oh, I got it wrong. I was on a high, I was ready to go, and I got it wrong. And that leads to behavioral hesitation. Maybe I should chill and not do this one. Maybe I should run. Now I'm scared. That sort of neural rerouting allows the map to no longer match the terrain for the attacker. So I'm only adding a psychological perspective to what you do on a daily basis as threat hunters, right? This is exactly what you're going to try to implement. But overall, this is what I want you to know. For attackers, in order for us to break their mental model of prediction, we must constantly introduce prediction fault and error into the traps we set for them. Maybe that's even misreporting a vulnerability. Maybe that's outing work that they've done from our threat hunters or our web researchers. For defenders, we need burnout to not harden into cognitive scars. They say we can't fight back, but we can fight back. It's called PsyOps. It's what I've studied my entire career. The best way into PsyOps is to fool the attacker to believe that they can be winning when they're actually breaking. Now, still beyond theory, what I'm mentioning to you over here is let's keep building our red teams, but build the culture. This is where I want to flip the script now to cultural drama. I talk about it, but you all have isolated security functions, and I know that. Your GRC doesn't talk to your engineering doesn't talk to your red team and your SOC, your red team and your SOC won't talk maybe to your AppSec, and then all together, everyone doesn't want to share the same tool, doesn't want their budgets to accommodate the same thing. You're all infighting. That infighting is causing a maze of ambiguity and issue for our functions. We're overloaded. I talked about this in terms of that System 1 and System 2 response. We have an opportunity to repair. So let's talk about culture for a second. For attackers, they have digital tribes. Their entire system as digital tribes is to build and reinforce the win. In our cybersecurity functions, we happen to not be building and reinforcing the win together through lack of coordination and communication on the same security language. In fact, we can't even define what risk means, let alone going to fair and dealing with the trouble of it, right? So again, I'm saying I'm not complaining here. What I'm asking you to do is start to reinforce that community. They have digital tribes, subcultures that offer validation, reinforcement, identity. Howard Becker had something called the labeling theory. The labeling theory reminds us that deviance is not the act itself, but how society reacts to it. Deviance is not the act itself, but how society reacts to it. And for hackers, intrusion is not deviance, it's brilliance. They have subcultures. From black hat forums to closed Telegram groups to operating apprenticeship guilds, and we have certs, 5 years to 100 years of experience for half the pay. So what do I say? This, again, is not a complaint, but rather an ask. A lot of those organizations out there, WeSys being one of them, ISACA being another, are great enablers. This university, another, are great enablers for culture building in the security organization. I want that Howard Becker's labeling theory that reminds us that deviance is not the act itself, but how society reacts to it, to then transform for us into our power. That their deviance, in fact, is not brilliance. Their deviance is our opportunity to reclaim how our society reacts to it. And this is where we get to words being weapons. What you say is what becomes real. The attacker language on everything is all about prestige and power. And we have given them that. From zero-day weaponized to mastermind operation to exfiltration success to elite crews to also celebrity vulnerabilities to lockbit to clop to just amplifying their success on a routine, continuous basis. But guess what phrases we use besides the acronym game? I see some fellow Gartner analysts or former Gartner analysts here. But what do? Instead of the acronym game, we go for SOC burnout, alert queue overload, tier 1 fatigue, metrics not being met. So what I want to say is here, we're living in the margins of public awareness. Defenders. Our victories are invisible by design, aren't they? We're hiding. Sociologist Irvin Goffman said, this is backstage labor. That's what we're doing, right? We're rarely mythologized, let alone valorized in our organizations. But wait, we do have culture too, though. We do have culture. We have blue teams, we have SecOps, we have your B-sides, we have your conferences, we have our shared rituals and forged identity through purpose. We do have that. But when culture is toxic, burnout is valorized, and mistakes punished, we fracture. To counter this, we as a community, as I ask now, and will continuously ask, is to build prestige. Let's build prestige and pathways like the military does for ritualized valor. Let's ritualize protection. So for those that are always reporting on threat intelligence services about the latest and greatest attack with the most beautiful image that's aligned to it, as well as a nice caricature of what that group is, remember that's valorizing the attacker. We never have Experian or ex-healthcare organization or ex-finance organization deterred something, deviated an attack, won. We always have what we lost. Reason why I mention this to you all today is because I want you to take a moment to sit with this melted in and think. How do we valorize security? How do we change the linguistic script? Prestige amplification is real. What you say becomes. And every time we glorify the attacker, we ignore the defender in language. And the legal battlefield is one I'll touch on ever so lightly. CISOs are being prosecuted for defending. And then we don't necessarily have the same reverse for attackers. In fact, I call it something like tax evasion. I say it's funny, they actually can stay within their own jurisdiction and they don't have to be taken out. Think of Russian GRU. Think of China's PLA as well. Attackers are given safe havens. Now, I expect that from certain nation states. But what I say is it's quite interesting that we're ready to put our CISOs in front of the legal system, prosecute them, and then cause perjury as well as shame for the defender morale. This I do not stand for. The legal battlefield, from jurisdiction all the way to policy asymmetry, is waiting for us to rebrand the mythology and the narrative power that the attacker has caused. Now, moving on from this, there's only one last thing I will state, and we will get to the rest of the conclusion, considering the 5 minutes I have. The research that I'm releasing, this is only touching the surface, is 100-page dissertation research that I'm writing as a part of my data science program on just this. We talk about every layer. And one of the most compelling layers that I realized is that it only takes $100 to $1,000 to build a malware kit, let alone to buy a crack tool, a ransomware as a service tool, or to get one from an exploit, but it costs us $50,000 to $500,000 per tool in cybersecurity. And the ROI? 10,000% in successful attacks versus a fraction of the pay in cybersecurity. Actually, it's negative. You lose, and you spent money. The skill acquisition path will always be one of diminishing. In fact, I can be quite honest with you, even speaking to you as a woman here in cybersecurity, there isn't very often a time where people look at me immediately and think that I know something, which is a joy for me because of what I can do to you. But that's not happening where I operated when I started off in cybersecurity, in open source intelligence, open forums, and hackers who embraced me a lot better than enterprise ever has. Anytime I was a part of a CTF or at DEF CON, I won better than I did embedded in a SOC. Because I was expected to do more, be better, know more, with less. So I ask you to change the cultural imperative. Defenders are spending millions to stop an attacker who may have been spending only a few hundred. It's an economic war of attrition. One side is lean and incentivized, the other is bloated and often punished for failure. Now, I know many of you can't do much about it because you're stuck to your budgets and no one cares in your enterprises, and then you still have to answer to board, and there's a lot to do on risk management and measurement. But you know why I started this conversation today? Because no one talks about this conversation. That's why I started it. So I ask you this on a closing note, and I keep to my time on the stage. We spoke at a very high level, and yes, we did speak much about the problems. But I promise you, come up to me after, and let's talk about solutions. That's why I'm here on stage. I love the community that we're building, and I am fully aware that we have touched only the surface. But when we have this conversation outside, we can talk theory, and we can talk winning together. Our culture measures pain, not valor. I will go on every podium and use my Gartner sticker, as well as my time to bring us together again, without any hierarchy and with only intelligence at hand. We mythologize the adversary, but we flatten the analyst. If your story is always lost, you are never the hero. And with that is my parting point.